Hello, everyone. It is your friend Joseph Craven here on 40 Minutes of Hell, which is both a witty basketball reference and also a description of what it feels like to listen to this podcast. 40 Minutes of Hell, of course, is a part of the Running Out the Clock family of sports podcasts. And I'm joined today by Running Out the Clock's resident AAF expert, Gray Barnes. We all missed the Alliance. How are you dealing with the loss of the Alliance?
Well, I'm just substituting it with some NBA playoff basketball, baby.
Woo! Ain't nothing like it. The thought going into the conference finals is that we were going to have a couple of very entertaining series. And they were, I don't know, were you entertained by them? I was entertained by them with I found them entertaining with asterisks next to it. But did you find these series entertaining?
Yeah, I mean, I probably the Eastern Conference Finals, just the way that they started out, those couple of games in Milwaukee were just really, really fun to watch. Mm-hmm. And the Brook Lopez's and the Nikola Mirotic guys coming out of nowhere to kind of save the game. But
those were incredible performances from the giant, awkward white dudes.
Exactly. I mean, there were some fun finishes too. So I think all in all, they were above average for sure.
Mm-hmm. I like the temptations to say that the Western Conference Finals were boring because it was a sweep, but they were all fairly close games. And in every single one of them, it felt like, at least in every single one of them, Golden State, maybe not the first one, but Golden State had to come back at late to win, and you kind of saw the resilience of what the Warriors were built around as a team originally before adding players like Kevin Durant and everything, and even before adding players like Andre Iguodala, because Iguodala missed a little bit of time, but you saw them having to come back. You saw some resilience, and that was entertaining in its own right. That's the asterisk, I think. The asterisk that I put on there is it was a sweep, so it was a boring series, but the games were actually kind of entertaining because you saw one of the best teams of this era of basketball and why they were good. Love them or hate them, why it is that they have been such a good team, and why it is they're a good team with their core players without KD, of Clay and Steph and Draymond. And it was kind of cool seeing the original lineup do what they developed into as a team once again. Again, love them or hate them. I know Ro Hunter, for example, despises the Warriors.
Well, you got to really see, in the words of Mark Jackson, just how much they out-hearted and out hustled, and they just wanted it more,
I believe the direct quote, if I remember correctly, from Mark Jackson during the game 4 was other coaches, the other 20, 29, 30, whatever, he spouts out a random number. I don't even think he said the correct number for how many other teams there are in the league.
I don't think he knows. He knows how many teams there are.
But he's like, other teams in the league don't look for players to match the talent of the Warriors. Look for players that match their heart. And I was like, I mean, talent also helps. I don't know. You got 3 of the best players in the league as your core, and then you added on 2 more incredibly talented players on top of that. I'm sorry, 3 more, because Iguodala before them. It is I feel like talent has something to do with it. Mark Jackson.
You're going to get 2 more All-Stars, one of which is arguably the best player in the world, coming back game 2 or 3 of the finals. So that's going to help him out a lot.
Oh, Mark Jackson. And then some people want to ask, why do you think Mark Jackson doesn't have a job? It's because he doesn't come across as understanding the game very well. Why doesn't Mark Jackson get back in coaching? Because he's doing fine as a broadcaster. And if he gets back in coaching, he's going to be out of a job in a couple of years. But
I don't know if he's doing fine as a broadcaster.
I mean, financially, he's doing fine. As far as being a good broadcaster, no. But financially, he's doing fine. He's got job security. He's got personally doing great. Let's talk a little bit more about the Warriors real quick, because they have been missing Kevin Durant, and it seems like that injury to KD has really allowed Draymond Green to kind of bounce back to being the type of player that he was before KD arrived. As when it feels like just a couple of years ago, we were talking about him having a borderline MVP season, Draymond Green, and his his ability to be a consistent triple-double threat. It was not long ago we thought, hey, maybe Draymond's the guy that can average a triple-double for a season if he continues doing this. Maybe he is the key to the Warriors' success, not Steph, not Clay. He's like the most valuable player there. I think he gets overshadowed with Kevin Durant being there. What are your thoughts on Draymond stepping up with KD out?
I think easily he was the catalyst for the Western Conference Finals and then making that run. Like he made, it's cliche, he made all the little plays or the things that don't show up in the scorebook, which they still did show up in the scorebook, but he was just that gnat that he was that defensive stopper.
Mm-hmm.
He found the open guys, led the fast break, and you even saw a little bit of shift in kind of his mentality. Like, who was it? McCall or somebody just completely whiffed a breakaway dunk. And
that was Jordan Bell.
Jordan Bell.
Because McCall is on a different team now.
Okay.
I forget where. But yeah, it was Jordan Bell. I distinctly remember that.
Yeah, and he just had, you would think of Draymond Green as a guy who would kind of go to the bench, kind of give like a death stare to a guy. And, but, he kind of had the, hey, you missed a shot. Did I miss a shot? Did KD miss a shot? Did Steph miss a shot? We all miss shots. Just keep going back out there and do your thing.
Yeah.
You kind of got to see a little bit of a shift in mentality and maybe like a mantle of leadership you may maybe not have seen before out of Draymond, or at least, that's visible to we, the fan. But
yeah,
it was kind of cool to see he carry on that little bit of leadership and positivity for his team. But I think he was so important to what they did, especially defensively, for the Warriors. It was pretty interesting to watch.
I thought that was an awesome moment to see as well. I mean, you got this younger guy in Jordan Bell, and I think one of the important things there is that Jordan Bell has to be one of the better. He has to step up in terms of being one of the better role players and defensive players for the Warriors, because what they do so well between their big three players has to be complemented by high energy defensive specialists, high energy rebounding guys. They don't need Jordan Bell, Jonas Drekbo. They don't need their bench players to come in and try to get them 17 to 20 points a game. They need their bench players to come in and just play great switching defense and get some key rebounds. And, they're hugely successful off of that. So to keep Jordan Bell's as a younger guy, I mean, in his, early mid-20s still, keep his mentality, keep his head screwed on straight, keep him from getting too down on himself off of an embarrassing, dunk miss. Yeah, that's absolute leadership, and that shows one of the reasons why the Warriors are one of the best teams that we've seen ever, and especially one of the the best team of the past decade, essentially. I mean, once you got past the Miami Heat and the big three there, I mean, the Warriors took over.
Yeah, really quick.
Really quick. And I think that's one of the key things there. And we don't see that often as fans, but it's pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, that's what we're seeing with Golden State right now. It seems like is they have the guys that can score points whenever points need to be scored and very quickly. You've got the catalyst in Draymond, and then you've just got some real solid role players right behind them that are doing just enough to complement those guys. They just complement well. They just do.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, and I think it gets overlooked. I think with like the long range threes, it gets overlooked with Draymond saying that he's the greatest defender of all time. It gets overlooked in those sort of areas. Your dog disagrees with that, Draymond. Your dog disagrees.
Not a Draymond fan.
No, clearly not. But you got all that. I think it gets overlooked a lot that they just have the right role players that come in, the right backup guys that come in and do just a few things kind of specialists and do a few things well and really build off of that. That's been huge. That's been huge for sure. On the other side of that, I feel like no, well, I don't want to get to Milwaukee quite yet. I was about to maybe jump to the Milwaukee Bucks. We could assess something there, but I won't get to there yet. Let's stay in the West for a second, because that is I think the thing that always is Houston's downfall, and why people always talk about Houston collapsing in the playoffs. I think one of their downfalls is that as great of an offensive team they are, and as great as of an offensive team that the Warriors are low-key a solid defensive team and have defensive specialists, and you don't see that in Houston, especially since Houston ditched, Patrick Beverley, who was their defensive specialist for sure. But what is, when you look at the Rockets, the Trailblazers, the Nuggets, the other teams in the West, who's going to be the team you think takes over the West when this Warriors run eventually comes to an end, whenever it does come to an end?
Oof. Well, Denver, they're on their way. They've got a shot, and they've got quite an interesting piece with Jokic.
Yeah.
That I don't think is rivaled by too many teams out there. I would venture to say Portland may have a shot, but they've been so stagnant. I feel like the past 3 or 4 seasons with trying to get it done with Dame Dalla and McCollum, and then trying to make it work with everybody else. They're a piece or two away, in my opinion.
Heck, they could be a healthy Yusef Nurkic away from challenging the Warriors a little bit better in this series,
Yeah. I think those two teams, in particular, you saw it this year. They made a relatively decent run at them. But other than that, man, off the top of my head, I think Houston's sort of in the same boat. When they lost that little bit of defensive edge, you're not going to outshoot Golden State too many times.
Right.
Especially if you shut down Harden, say shut down, you limit him.
Right.
Boy, they don't have the Trevor Arizas and the Ryan Andersons and where every spot on the floor, it was basically just 5 out, just find the open guy. It seems like they're losing a piece every year. So I don't know. I think that Portland and Denver are on their way. If Portland can kind of maybe add a piece, I don't know. We'll see. Doesn't look like Golden State's going to slow down anytime soon unless they lose Clay or.
Yeah, I think with them it's just going to be age. I think Steph is going to start to show his age a little bit more in the next few years, because I think he's always kind of struggled a little bit with some wear and tear on the on knees and ankles and whatnot, and I feel like that could be something that we see happen to him. But no, I don't see the Warriors stopping anytime soon, outside of just kind of aging out of it a little bit. That's a great point with the Rockets. It seems like they keep losing, some key components in the chase of getting another big name. That seems to happen a lot with them. I had this theory for a little while that what Houston was trying to do was kind of just the next evolutionary step in what the Orlando Magic did with Dwight Howard back in the day. Of the extreme 4 out 1 in type of offense. Like Orlando built it around having an unstoppable guy down low and then a bunch of shooters around him. Houston is doing it with having an unstoppable guy out on the perimeter in Harden, but then having, the hyper athletic shot blocking rebounder, alley-oop catching Clint Capella down low. They're trying to do that. But I've got a theory now. I want to see what you think of this. I got a theory that, because to summarize that thought, I do agree with you. I think that at this point, the Rockets need to consider doing a bit of larger overhaul to what they're trying to do. And I feel like the Nuggets or the Trailblazers have more of a chance of taking the reins there from the Rockets in terms of actually, playoff longevity in the Western Conference. But I'm starting to think that the actual, spiritual successor to those old Orlando Magic teams is actually the Milwaukee Bucks. And you're fist pumping. Yes, awesome. All right, we're on the same page here. Yes, you've got Giannis, who is not a shooter, but is the pinnacle of a positionless player right now, right? Like, I think they call him, quote unquote, a power forward, when he is not a low post guy at all, but also, shoots like a stupid percentage from down low because he's constantly getting to the basket. And then they just kind of surrounded him with good shooters, including some good, like, stretch four shooters, guys like Brook Lopez, who's developed into a good shooter, Nikola Mirotic, who's a good shooter. It's kind of turning out that the Bucks maybe are taking the Orlando Magic's old approach and adapting it to the modern positionless NBA. That's my theory. I want to get your thoughts on this theory now.
That is, I never thought about it that way, but now that you say that, it's a pretty good comparison. I think the one thing, my dog is trying to eat my iPad. Oh, now she's just on my lap.
Okay, good.
All right. Well, I think the one thing that held them back this year, honestly, was just experience. And adapting to what a 7-game series can do when a team kind of collapses on Giannis. Like, okay, well, where do we go from here?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, like let's see, you got Eric Bledsoe, you've got Chris Middleton, Giannis, Lopez, Mirotic, all those guys. Yeah, I mean, any one of those guys can shoot. And honestly, Giannis wasn't too terrible shooting from the perimeter this series, which is kind of an albatross. But yeah, I think now that they lost the series the way that they did, maybe the front office can kind of look and see, okay, well, if we changed one thing about the team for that particular series, how would we have fared? Man, that is really interesting. I got to think about that.
I'm just saying, I think it's kind of the good comparison, because I mean, they want to call him. If this is what cracks me up about him, is that if you get onto my favorite sports website, basketballreference.com, and you just pull up his career, right? He starts off as this 19-year-old, and they have him listed on there as a small forward. And then by the time you get to 2014-15, they have him listed as a shooting guard. And then by the time you get to 15-16, they have him listed on the website as a point guard for some reason. You get to 16-17, back to small forward. 17-18, power forward. This year, power forward. He does a little bit of everything. He just does. And he's inconsistent. Yeah, he's not a great shooter in that regard. But the dude has been averaging a ridiculous 20+ points for 3 straight seasons now. While not being a shooter in a shooting-heavy league, averaging double-digit rebounds the past 2 seasons, averaging 5 to 6 assists per game the past 3 seasons. He does a little bit of everything, and he does it in this positionless, way. And so, yeah, you're right. They throw guys like Middleton, who I think is one of the more underrated players in the NBA and has been for a while. I'm glad he got his All-Star nod this season. I just think I think it's good. I think this is a team that is going to do better than they even did this year next season. I don't think the Bucks have anything to feel bad about. Toronto did figure some things out. And you were just kind of mentioning that a little bit. And we had talked some about it, texting back and forth when the Bucks got eliminated, but Toronto just kind of figured a few things out in that series. You got to game 3, they kind of locked some things down, and I know you can't necessarily always count on what do they do, putting the wall in front of Giannis so he can't just get past you. You can't always do that against the Bucks because they're a good enough team to work around that. But Toronto seemed to do something right. win 4 in a row against a team that doesn't lose games in, back-to-back situations there. What seemed to be the difference between the Raptors and the Bucks, if you had to take a guess?
I think one of the things that the broadcast team kind of got right, they were talking about for the Raptors, the addition of Marc Gasol.
Mm-hmm.
Saying that very slowly because that's all I can think of when I think of Marc Gasol these days. He's just Marc Gasol. He did a really good job. He didn't take a whole lot of shots. They weren't asking him to do that. They were asking him to essentially be like the Andrew Bogut of the Raptors.
Mm-hmm.
And along with that, I mean, if Giannis got free throw line, rim to free throw line, I mean, they absolutely collapsed.
Yeah.
And I mean, even in game 1, I believe it was for the series. I mean, they had to get Brook Lopez to make 5 or 6 threes in the second half to really pull that game out. And, credit for finding him, Lopez and Mirotic out on the perimeter and them hitting the shots. But I mean, if they weren't hitting shots, I mean, game 1 could have gone a completely different way. They just decided that Giannis is not going to beat us. And it worked. Games 3, 4, 5, and 6, they just were not going to let him put 40 on him.
Yeah.
And just hope that, Eric Bledsoe was not going to have a good game. Also, Kyle Lowry showed up this series.
Yeah.
Like he hasn't shown up in the playoffs, I don't think, ever.
No.
Fred VanVleet,
yep,
just pouring it in from deep. I mean, they had some performances that from guys that usually don't have a good playoff run. So they just kind of all had it working games 3 through 6. Just everything that could go right kind of went right for them. And then plus Kawhi. I mean, probably the one year that they're going to have Kawhi in Toronto.
Yeah, making the most.
Yeah, just having that superstar along with guys that haven't really played well in the playoffs do well. So I think they figured it out, and Milwaukee just had a hard time adjusting. They just kind of went with the game plan that they had for the regular season, which was really successful. But in a 7-game series, those adjustments game to game are what seems to get teams kind of over the hump. So, yeah, like what I said earlier, that's experience.
Yes.
So I don't know. We'll see. The finals should be interesting.
They should be. We'll talk about the finals in just a second here. But before we get into that, looking at those 4 games that Toronto won against Milwaukee, looking at the plus minus, which of course is, for those of you that get confused at all the metrics, your microphone is really scratching on your sweatshirt pretty hard.
Uh-oh.
Got real loud in my ears for a second. The plus minus is just the track of the net changes in score when a particular player is on or off the court. So like when the player's on the court, whether his team is scoring better or scoring worse, essentially is all it is. In those games, Giannis was relegated to almost being a bit of a non-factor at best, and then a detriment to his team at worst. He was a +3 in game 3. He was a -19 in game 4. Let's see. I lost it. He was a -2, so non-factor in game 5. He was a +3 in game 6. So yeah, at best kind of a non-factor. And that was obviously a big time. It was obviously a big time crush to the team. I think you're right. A lot of it comes down to the fact that there's more experience on this Toronto team. Adding Kawhi, adding a guy who is, who was supposed to be the future of the Spurs and then wasn't. And then
that was such a strange thing that happened. Like I still don't
weird.
really know what exactly made that relationship go bad.
No idea. And he's such a weird guy that there's no way to figure out either, because it just doesn't really seem like the type of guy to have done anything diva-like. But then all of a sudden he just kind of isn't talking to the team at all. And I don't know. It was weird. Very, very weird. But yeah, you actually got good Kyle Lowry. You got good minutes out of Fred VanVleet, as you mentioned. I think in game 6, Lowry and VanVleet both played like 35 to 40 minutes apiece. So like you're getting good minutes and results out of your guards. That's huge. Kyle Lowry, a plus 15 in game 3. And what all did he do? Plus 5 in game 4. That's not quite as impressive, but VanVleet pulling in some major bench point, plus 25 from Fred VanVleet in game 4. You got big results out of those guys, and I think that's huge. Part of the success, it seems like, is that as well, the Raptors just happen to be a really, really dominant half-court team in an era of the NBA in which half-court, you don't see it as much. You don't see half-court dominance a huge amount. The Bucks themselves are a big, big. Giannis is great in the open court. He's unstoppable in the open court. He's a real quick, fast break, instant 2-point type of scorer right there. The Raptors are able to play a much more efficient and dominant, especially with Kawhi Leonard doing what he's doing, half-court game. And that, I think, also had a major influence on how this series went. Once they were able to lock the game to the half-court, Milwaukee had no answer for them. And Milwaukee was not able to really get into any sort of, full court, fast-paced action that would have aided or played more into their tempo as well. So we've got this matchup now between Toronto and Golden State. There was a part of me that before the Eastern Conference Finals happened, there's a part of me that would have said that the Bucks would have been a better matchup against the Warriors going into the finals. After watching the way that Toronto played the last 4 games, my opinion has switched on that. I think Toronto's absolutely a great matchup. What do you think of this matchup between the Raptors and the Warriors?
I think it could be a good series if Kyle Lowry shows up and is not a detriment to his team.
Yeah.
You got to get those same type of minutes from VanVleet and interesting player Pascal Siakam.
Oh man, I like Spicy P.
Spicy P. I think if those guys are just kind of their average, Kyle Lowry goes back to his Lowry playoff type of play. I don't think it's going to be extremely competitive. They've got to get a win in those first 2 games, in my opinion, to really have a shot. They got to steal one.
Yeah.
If KD and DeMarcus Cousins come back, midway through the series, man, that's going to be rough if they're down 0-2. But I don't know. I hope it's going to be a good series. I think if defensively, if Toronto can kind of put something together, it could be entertaining, I guess. I don't know. I don't really have a whole lot of faith, honestly, in any team going up against Golden State these days. But hopefully I'm wrong, and at least it'll go 5 or 6.
Yeah. I was looking it up to see what the head-to-head was like during the season, and Toronto won both matchups against Golden State this year. Both of them were in November. One was at the end of November, one was in December. They were like 2 weeks apart from each other. So both of them were within a month of each other. That's what I was trying to say. And the first one was an overtime, 131-128 victory. Yeah. The second one was a 113-93 victory on the road at Oracle Arena. And so, if you look at the track record, apparently the Raptors have had something going well enough for them to be able to pull off those games. I'm trying to see what exactly would have been if there was any sort of indication as to what worked out, in those games. But so you got something there that I think does seem to point towards a decent chance for the Raptors. I've got the box score right here. I'm already noticing one interesting thing here in the box score. One of them being that Kawhi Leonard only played in one of those games. Interesting. So Kawhi Leonard played in the game that went into overtime. All right.
Okay.
In that game, which again was 131 to 128 in overtime, Kawhi Leonard dropped 37 points. Spicy P had 26. Lowry 10, Danny Green 13. Serge Ibaka was in the starting lineup and had 20 points. So that's pretty good there. But that was obviously mostly on the back of Kawhi Leonard, Pascal Siakam, but with a good breakout game there out of Serge Ibaka. Kyle Lowry had 12 assists in that game. So that's pretty cool. The second game, though, Kawhi did not play, and Kyle Lowry dropped 23 points and 12 assists. Serge Ibaka, 20 points, 12 rebounds. So, I mean, just looking at the box score, it seems like the guys that are the side players for the Raptors stepped up there in that particular matchup. This is all before Marc Gasol trade, all of that. So, it's a different team now for sure. But it seems like guys like Ibaka and Kyle Lowry actually stepped up against the Warriors during the regular season. I don't know. Could be interesting there. Are you predicting the Warriors to win this? If you gun your head, make the prediction right now. Who wins the NBA Finals this year?
Warriors in 5.
In 5. All right. I've said from the beginning that it's really hard to get 3 championships in a row, and it takes a very particular mentality. And it's just almost impossible to do it. It's only happened a handful of times in the history of the NBA. And so I'm going to stick with my guns here. Whether or not I really feel confident in it or not, I'm going to stick with it and say that the Warriors do not get 3 in a row, and that the Raptors.
I hope you're right. I need some parity in my sports these days, so I hope you're right.
Right, exactly. We don't get it that often. I think you're more prone to be able to get it in a sport like basketball, because in basketball, just about anyone can beat anyone at any point in time. College basketball, professional basketball. Dynasties, though, do happen, and when they do, it's either like you're either able to say, man, like in the case of the Chicago Bulls in the 90s, you're able to say, man, like, look at this dynasty. This is a heck of a team. Like, they've got, the greatest player ever, surrounded by probably the best perimeter defender to have ever played in Scottie Pippen, and probably the best rebounder of all time in Dennis Rodman, and they're able to just complement each other so well, blah, blah, blah. And then sometimes you get something like the Warriors or like the Patriots and football, Alabama football, stuff like that. And it's just kind of like, I'm sick of watching these fools. I don't know what the difference is. Maybe we were kids in the 90s, so it was more fun to us when teams won. But I don't know. We're more cynical as adults. So I'm going to have to, yeah.
The Warriors of, 4 years ago or so, man, I tuned in every single time they were on, like, primetime TNT or ESPN or whoever was covering them. There was just something fun and new about watching them play.
Yeah.
Like, I remember watching it was Golden State at Oklahoma City when Steph pulled up just beyond half court with like 4 seconds left and just stroked a 3 for no real reason.
Right.
He could have easily taken like 4 or 5 more dribbles to the basket. Yeah. And like, that was fun. It was so much, you never knew what you were going to watch. I think now it's just like, okay, well, here we go again. I don't know. I feel like the Golden State Warriors kind of mystique, I don't know, it's just gotten a little stale. Like, you do know what you're going to get when you watch them now, and nobody's really figured out how to stop it yet.
Well, I made a joke on Twitter the other day that the Golden State Warriors were the Apple of sports. You're going to get a new, the new iPhone or whatever every year, but like, nothing's really going to be new at this point in time. It's always going to be the same thing. You know what they're going to do, but you can't stop them from being successful. And that's kind of how I feel about Apple products, and that's how I feel about the Golden State Warriors. That's just kind of what you get. and success can like ruin a perspective on a team. Like, yeah, I mean, they were very the Splash Brothers when they really busted on the scene. Man, that was entertaining stuff. Really think what it was for me. I mean, I think it was entirely Kevin Durant showing up. Now, granted, Draymond Green, I don't really care much for Draymond Green. He gets on my nerves. But I think it was one of those things I'm like, whatever, I'm willing to deal with him. I think it really was when Kevin Durant decided to go to Golden State, when then Boogie Cousins decides to go over to Golden State. All that sort of stuff starts happening, and it's like, oh my gosh, okay, well, this is just kind of dumb at this point because that's obvious ring chasing, and it's just annoying to see that. Maybe that's why it's a little bit refreshing to see the original three of Klay, Steph, and Draymond do their thing for a little bit against Portland.
Yeah, that second half that Steph had, where I think he had like 31. He had 0 in the first and 30 or 31 in the second half. That kind of like, it's like, oh, okay, I remember watching this.
Yep.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the KD, and for me, it was KD. I was like, oh man, are you serious? How is anyone ever going to beat the Warriors now? That's actually kind of interesting. And then the Boogie Cousins thing just was like, okay, it took it over the edge.
Yeah.
Over the edge for me.
Yeah.
I don't know. New Orleans.
Don't care much for Boogie. And then, all that happens. And it cracks me up that people were just like, are they going to be able to win without Boogie Cousins? I'm like, he barely played for him this year, guys.
Yeah, they've done it plenty this year.
Yeah. My gosh. They barely even, I sometimes forgot he was on the team, I mean, he was healthy for what, like maybe a month and a half?
Yeah.
It's what it felt like. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how much gas they have left in the tank. But yeah, dynasties, you either are totally fine with it. You could be a bandwagoner even, or you could just be flat out disgusted. It seems like there's no middle ground where like no one is like neutral on a dynasty. Everyone is like, you have an opinion when it comes to sports dynasty, whether you know it or not. I always gravitate towards hating them. I just do. I don't know why it is. I think it's just because I really like whenever an underdog does pull something out. So, all right. We're about out of time here. Let's get a couple of thoughts down on the all-NBA teams that came out. I think it's funny, first of all, that people seem to be making a bit of a fuss about the all-NBA a little bit, especially with like Klay Thompson, whether Klay Thompson should have been an all-NBA player, because most of the time no one pays attention to the all-NBA teams. People only really pay attention to the all-star because the all-star, voting is a popularity contest. All-NBA is actually like based on what they did this season. But all-NBA, the first team, of course, being Giannis, Paul George, Nikola Jokic, James Harden, Steph Curry. You got any issues with these five on this first team?
I mean, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I'm really glad that they recognized Jokic.
Yes.
That was pretty cool. Maybe looking at the second team just to see if I mean,
I could maybe see Dame instead of Steph.
Yeah.
Dame, because when I look at it and I look at those players on that first team, they're very clearly guys that are like the core players to their team's success.
Right.
Like Giannis, the Bucks are successful because they have Giannis. As good as the rest of the team is, he's the core. Jokic, the Nuggets are what they are because of him. James Harden, of course, averaged like 70 points a game this year or whatever, so he's on there. But Paul George established himself as the reason for the Thunder's success this year, so I think he deserves to be on there. And Curry, I feel like is not necessarily the case during the regular season. I feel like you could maybe replace him with Dame, but honestly, I don't have much of an issue with the first teamers.
Yeah, I don't either.
Just don't see it. Do you look at the second and the third teams when you've got Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard, Joel Embiid, Damian Lillard, Kyrie Irving, then third team, Blake Griffin. Look at Blake Griffin making third team. LeBron James, Rudy Gobert, Russell Westbrook, and Kemba Walker. Any of those names you would have switched around or anything?
The one that kind of sticks out to me, I would have switched Kemba and Kyrie, in my opinion.
I'm right there with you.
I'm a big Kemba fan. Let's see. I like Joel. Man, at that point, Westbrook. I mean, it's I don't know. Really, the biggest question out of all three of these teams, it's like, what do you do with LeBron?
Yeah, exactly. That's the one. That's the one that you look at it and it's like, okay. I mean, why are you putting a guy? You put him on there because he's LeBron James. I get that, but you're putting on a guy who his team was a lottery team. You know, all these other guys, are making the playoffs. Hornets made the playoffs, right? I'm suddenly second guessing myself. All of a sudden, I'm like, who they were in the playoffs? I'll look that up. But of course, you got everyone else is on there. Why do you have LeBron on there when you could very easily put Clay on there maybe instead of LeBron? You could also have bumped Russ up to a second team because didn't Russ average a triple-double again this year?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like that. How is that not monumental to people? I get some people are just like, oh, he's just stat chasing more than anything else. Okay. It's still difficult as crap to do that. Yeah. I don't know. Those are the ones that stand out to me is I feel like you could have maybe given a bit of a boost. You could have maybe given a bit of a boost to someone like Kemba, maybe to Russ out of all of that, and maybe Clay. I mean, I could see that maybe, but no, the Hornets were one position out. The Pistons got the 8th seed in the East, and the Hornets were the 9th seed. So there you go. So Kemba did not. So I don't know. I like Kemba Walker a lot. I think he's a great player, but maybe he and LeBron should not have been on there just because maybe teams that don't make the playoffs shouldn't have players represented on all NBA teams. Maybe. I don't know.
Kind of looking at some small forwards that qualified to have their statistics kept up with. Danilo Gallinari, meh.
Mm-hmm.
Luka, well, maybe.
Yeah, if he's classified as a small forward, then yeah.
And then past that, like TJ Warren, like I don't know. It does kind of get a little hairy once you get past like Kawhi, LeBron, KD, Paul George. So I don't know. But I mean, like LeBron essentially kind of gave the season up.
Yeah.
After a while. And that kind of that knocks him down a few pegs.
It does.
For me.
I like the man. I like what he's done in the league. I like what he's done with his school and all of that. But this is just he's LeBron James, so he made an All-NBA team because he's supposed to. That's all this one is. Let's just call it like it is.
And you know what? He's going to be a first-team All-NBA selection again once Kawhi and Kemba go out to LA and they have another big three again. And
but Big Four
going to restart this cycle.
Big Four, because if you listen to Lakers fans, they're going to get Kawhi and Kemba and pull off the trade to bring in Anthony Davis. So, the Lakers are going to be great. Oh, and somehow Zion Williamson's going to drop from the 1st pick to the 4th pick for them. Yeah. So that's how I'm pretty sure Lakers fans' minds work most of the time. Sorry if that's offensive to any Lakers fans listening.
Well,
I'm sure there's so many.
You know what? I want to get a plane ticket to go out to LA to go to the next LeBron James. What do they call it? They were protesting LeBron.
Oh yeah,
exactly. And like 6 people showed up.
Yep, I'm in. Let's do it.
Oh man,
we can report live from there. Want to report live from there?
Live from the LeBron protest.
Love it. All right, we're gonna wrap this episode up then because we've hit our time limit for sure. Gray, thank you for jumping on short notice. Literally texting you about 15 minutes before we hit record and saying, "Hey man, you do anything?" So thanks for doing this with me.
Nope. Oh yeah, absolutely.
We're looking forward to the playoffs starting up later this week. I mean, the finals starting up later on this week. Gray, let's also maybe we can try to get a little weekly pessimist Mississippi State baseball episode recorded very soon for running out the clock. What do you think of that?
Oh man, put me in, coach. I'm ready to play today.
I don't have
Look
time
at me.
today,
I
man.
can be center field. Oh, okay. That's okay.
All right, this has been 40 Minutes of Hell. I'm your friend, Joseph Craven. Our time's up. We'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.